All right, everybody, we are live with Drive Your Practice with Dental Implants. I am Elijah Desmond. I'm one of the owners with Driven Dental Implant Marketing, and here we have Charles Biami, the other owner of Driven Dental Implant Marketing, and we have our special guest, Dr. Bruce Baird. Now, let me tell you this. I actually heard Bruce in Jamaica for the very first time, and it's extremely difficult to get me to be wowed from any speaker. And I'm going to tell you what, with his dry sense of humor and the way that you could relate to him, he is by far one of the top speakers I ever heard. You're the owner of the Productive Dentist Academy, the owner of Compassionate Finance. Can you give us a little bit more background on yourself? I'm super happy to have you on as our guest.
Oh, sure. It's my pleasure to be on the show today. My background, really, I've been a dentist for 38 years. Spent 4 years with Uncle Sam, was in the Army. My first duty assignment right out of dental school was Korea. Came home and was in San Antonio. And then I've been in private practice here for 34 years. Pretty much all of the things that I think about as far as additional businesses that I've started have always been from the thought process of being a dentist. And, what do dentists need? What do we think about, and that type of stuff. So those are the things that kind of lead me when I see that we have a problem or an issue that we could address. That's really where, the thought process happens. That's what we do.
Awesome. Can you tell me how Compassionate Finance got started and your role in the company now?
Yeah, we started, necessity is kind of the mother of invention. When you're in a situation, 2008, the market went down big time, and there were a lot of people having difficulties. And the cases that I was ordinarily doing, people were hanging on to cash because they didn't know what was going to happen. And so I started seeing these opportunities going out the door. And interestingly enough, my partner, Jeff Buski, and I were riding back from an implant seminar over in Dallas. And we might have had a few cocktails, and we were talking, and he said, "You think we could finance ortho if we got $2,000 down?" And we're riding in the car, and I said, "Well, 2,000 down. Well, how much do we have in it? There's how much are our hard costs for it?" And he said, "We got about $450 in it." And I said, "What do we charge?" He said, $5,900. And I went, "Wow," because I don't do ortho in the practice. Jeff does. And I went, "Wow, that's a pretty highly leveraged procedure." And this is something that, I started thinking about all the people that don't have 2,000. And I just started wondering, well, I began thinking about implants. You've got $150, $200 implant, whatever it is, and I'm charging $2,000 for it. That's a highly leveraged procedure. CERAC, I've got a $35 block, I'm charging $1,200. And so I started thinking, and we're letting people walk out the door without doing the treatment. And so that began the thought process. When I got home, I'm one of those Excel spreadsheet guys. I run business models on Excel spreadsheets. I know you guys do. And I just began running these models. And I promise you, I didn't sleep for probably 36 hours because I kept looking at it and I kept saying, well, that's impossible. But being on the correct side of interest, where you're getting the interest and not paying the interest, all of a sudden I started realizing this is something not only that, we could do, we really should do it for our patients, especially with the amount of leverage we have. And not knowing, there are three main reasons why we've never done it before. One reason was we've been told from the podium, and I've been telling people from the podium, don't be the bank. The other thing was, I don't know what the rules are. If I wanted to charge interest, what are the rules in Texas compared to New Jersey, compared to Hawaii? And the third thing was, which is what really blew me away, is what if they don't pay me? And that's what every dentist always asks, what if they don't pay me? But the truth is, interest offsets risk. And most dentists don't really understand that. Most people don't understand that. But the truth is, if you're doing multiple, loans, you can actually, do this with very little to no risk. And so that's really what kind of started the whole process and the whole thought process behind it. And then it kind of flourished from there. In 2010 is when we did our kind of a beta test, and it's been going ever since. And we've done over 175 million in notes, and we're doing about 3.5 to 4 million in notes every month. So it's something that is it's happening.
That's crazy. It's super exciting. When I was there in Jamaica with Elijah, we were in the back of the room listening to your presentation, and not only were you entertaining, but the when you started getting into the details and showing those case studies and the spreadsheets and the numbers were there, and from a business perspective, which is what driven dental implant marketing does, is help dentists attract and convert these high value cases. That opportunity just became super apparent. And Elijah was literally pacing back and forth. He was so excited when we saw this opportunity. We're like, we've got to get this guy on a live cast. We need to share this with our clients and our prospective clients so they can make sure that they have the ability to help their client or help their patients, say yes to more treatment and take advantage of this huge financial opportunity that's available to them. So I'm really excited about kind of getting into the details of what compassionate finance is and the opportunity and how we can really turn a practice around or transform it completely once you plug this in.
Let me tell you why I was pacing, Charles. Let me full disclosure. It is easy.
For you guys.
Awesome line. That's perfect. Hey. But I tell you what, here's the truth. I was walking in the back of the classroom in Jamaica, and there was about 300 attendees, and I felt like he was talking straight to me because as a dental implant marketing company, the number one obstacle to getting a patient to say yes is financing. And there was never a secret, there wasn't a secret tool to make it all work. And so he was singing to me. I felt like I had front row seats, even though I was in the back of the room pacing before I went out to speak myself. But it felt like he was singing the words to me that I've been waiting to hear forever. It was a perfect solution, and it just made sense. So sorry to interrupt. Keep going, Charles.
Yeah, I mean, to get into that, I mean, let's talk about that and why the financing aspect is so important to closing high value treatment. And I'm sure, Dr. Bruce, you've got a lot of experience with that. But if you had to just sit a dentist down and say, look, this could be the most important aspect that you need to have in your practice in order to get more patients to say yes to those big cases, how would you explain that?
There's no question. People will come in and we'll ask, I always kind of give a ballpark in fees. And for instance, if I'm doing a, all on six or whatever, a full arch, upper or lower, I said, and they all want in the mouth permanent. And I'll say, I want you to understand that is the Cadillac. And you may be looking at $30,000 for your upper and $30,000 for the lower. The patient will say one of three things. They'll either say, yeah, I figured it was going to be expensive. That means let's go to work. Or they'll say, gosh, I didn't know it was going to be that much. Or they'll think there's no way I can do it. Now, most of them have done research now with all the stuff that's online. They know it's going to be fairly expensive, but many times they didn't know it was going to be that expensive. Didn't know veneers would be that expensive. Didn't know that, a lot of things are going to be that expensive. And what I try to tell the docs when I'm sitting down, everything you do is based on your time value. How much is your time worth? The average dentist in the U.S. is worth $405 an hour. That's the average. Well, what if you could increase that by 4 times or 5 times? What if you could make your value worth $2,000 an hour, meaning now you're doing $16,000 a day or $20,000 a day? What would that do to you? Would you ever want to go back to 405? And most of them say, no, I'd never want to. A lot of our patients might have $5,000 to put down. They might have 10, they might have 20. They just don't have the full 60. And it's very hard to get financing for the full 60 in many cases when you start talking about large cases. So from my perspective and talking to another dentist, I said, here's the thing you have to remember is you want to get your hard costs covered. People say, well, I know, but what is my hard cost? Because I have a building and I have a team and I have all that. You're going to pay for that anyway. You're still paying for all that. The average dentist has 23% of their time open, and I believe it's 50% of their time. So you've got time available. Why not get your hard costs covered, which would be the cost of the implants, the cost of the lab costs and everything else, which for me, it runs about $8,000 per arch when I'm doing a big case of implants, maybe 10. So I get 20 down. If I get 20,000 down, I'll do financing on the other 40. That means, what does financing mean? Well, we use the term compassionate finance. If you try to do it on your own, or if I try to do it on my own and I put Dr. Bruce Baird financing, we do in-house financing, Well, they're going to say, okay, well, that's great. But when the payments come, when they're time to make a payment, they put you at the bottom of the pile. And your team's the one having to make the phone calls. And they go, hey, I'm not going to answer the phone. I know I owe them money. Whereas if it looks like a third party payment with monthly payments coming out off of ACH checking, it really handles that issue for them. People will continue to make those payments. And as now my productivity per hour, because I just did a $60,000 case that might take me 7 hours or 8 hours to do of my total time. Now I'm looking at 6,000 an hour, 7,000 an hour, of which $20,000 of cash payment is more than I would be doing if I did not have that option. And the monthly payments start coming in. We have some offices that bring in $70,000 a month just in monthly payments. The big part of that deal is, what's the risk? What if they don't pay me? I'm always freaked out about, what if they don't pay me? Well, the truth is, if you have 5, 10, 15, 20, 40, 50 contracts, all the interest from the people who are paying offset the 1 or 2 or 3 that don't pay.
Yeah.
And that's really the principle behind the whole thought process. And when I started looking at numbers, a dentist will easily sign up for a PPO and take a 40% discount, but they're worried about the one patient out of 5 or 6 or 8 or 10 that don't make a payment. And, and that's what compassionate finance does. It allows us to work on more patients than we've ever been able to work on, help people make more revenue than we've ever been able to make. We have some offices that make more in down payments than they used to produce, and they're helping more people. That's huge. I mean, when you start looking at that opportunity to help people and do well, I call it doing good while doing good, and it's perfect for that. And, people will say, well, I just want to do one loan, see how it works. Well, you're either going to be massively successful, you're going to be a total failure, the patient doesn't pay, or it'll be somewhere in between. The truth is, if you have 5 contracts, 10, 15, 30, the more contracts you have, the less risk there is. And that's how it works.
Right. Yeah. I mean, so many nuggets there. I just want to kind of share some of the things that jumped out at me. Number one is the mindset shift. Like you said, there's dentists out there willing to take a 40% hit with a PPO, but aren't willing to consider the risk of, a very small default rate when you have a structured program in place. So that's number one. Just think about that for a minute and think you're actually like guaranteeing yourself a loss when you're going to concentrate the majority of your patient base with insurance, where this gives you an option to at least expand. The second thing was the structure that this program brings to the place, and the authority actually is something that reduces your risk. Like you said, a dentist could technically go out and do their own financing program and have their team member manage it. But not only is that going to cost you your own resources, but that authority is not there. Like you said, you go right to the bottom of the pile. When you have all of this structure in place, it feels official, and that reduces your risk. And it's going to cost you less resources to actually implement. I think that's a key insight. And then one last thing is something you said at the very beginning of the last question was, you said, this is the Cadillac of dental implant treatment. And I really like that car analogy. And in fact, if you're a dentist that is doing high value treatment, I'm going to encourage you to watch your marketplace and look at how auto marketers market their products. And this is a high value purchase. I mean, we're talking tens of thousands of dollars. Most people need a car to manage their lifestyle. And so you're kind of somewhere on the spectrum into where you want to invest. But most people don't go into an auto dealership and drop cash. What do? They finance it. And so you gotta think about that. That can influence the way that you market your dentistry.
You bet. Fits into your monthly budget, so that's it. Yeah,
exactly. It's all about that monthly budget. And then the one other thing too, you said that there was kind of the 3 categories of patients, and some are like, I knew it was going to be expensive. Oh, that's more than I thought. And then there's that third category, the patients that they think that it's totally out of reach, but they still have this burning desire to have the smile that they want, right? And I think that's a big fear for a lot of patients that are actually actively seeking high value treatment, is that they're afraid that it's going to be out of reach. So much so that it almost is a barrier for them to just show up for the consultation. So if you have this in your toolbox, this ability to finance treatment, and said, yes, no matter what your treatment plan is, we can help you fit it into your budget. So at least come in and find out what that looks like. That's going to give those patients a sigh of relief and say, hey, you're going to give them hope so that they can continue the process and get a step closer to their smile. And it's going to make you stand out in the marketplace.
And that really is, I mean, yes, I love doing full arch. I love doing that. It's fun. But there's a whole gamut of implant options. I mean, I tell my patients every time, I said, I could have 10 of my buddies come in here. We can give you 20 opinions. I mean, we literally could come up with so many options. The high end would be $30,000. You're talking about spending $60,000, but it's worth it, And then you have an option where it may be a couple of implants on the lower with a bar overdenture or just snaps or something like that. I will find something in their budget that works for them. Now, what's really cool is most everybody wants to do they want to do the big one. They want to get teeth in the mouth permanent. The thought of $60,000 cash is very daunting. They're just thinking, man, I don't think I can do that. But when you present compassionate finance and it's now 18 or 20, they have a much better chance of being able to come up with the 18 or 20 that covers my hard costs, and I'm actually productive during that time. But then also they look at their monthly payments. Maybe it's whatever, maybe it's $700 a month, $500 a month, for a big case like that. We'll go out 72 months, and people say, oh, no, I don't want to ever go 72 months. Oh, actually, you really do, because if you understand the interest, the longer the patient pays, the more money you make. So It's not me making that decision with our software. They get to pick whatever works for them. And they may say, well, I can probably do $600 a month. And I say, well, let's don't probably, why don't we do this? Why don't we do $450 a month? That way it's not going to be that big a deal, because I'm setting them up for success. And if I'm able to do that, man, they are so excited when because they actually get to do the work. And they many times have been through 3 consults at 3 different places. Now they come to me, and we've got an option for pretty much for any type of treatment that we have. So it's been really awesome.
And we find that a lot in the marketing that we do. The patients come in with second opinions, and you're right. It's all about using a combination of your clinical creativity to find the pathway to the smile that they want, and having financial options. And the truth is, the practice that has the most flexible financing options, where the patient can actually fit it into their budget without totally disrupting their lifestyle, that's the practice they're going to choose. That's probably the number one factor for them saying yes to treatment. So it definitely makes a difference. Another thing, and I'd love to get your opinion on this, and you can validate it or say that I'm totally wrong, but here's what I have observed. I think when you have a whole toolbox of financial options, it increases your entire ability to both attract those big cases, because you can put out offers to the marketplace that make you stand out, when you're advertising that monthly payment. It gives your team the ability to be more confident when they're on the phone booking the appointment, because they know that if that patient comes in, we're probably going to find a solution for them. It gives them confidence when they're presenting the case, because they know, hey, yes, we're going to figure this out, and I'm going to get it to a place where it's going to be easy for you to say, yes, I know you want this smile. It comes down to the numbers. Let's just figure it out, and then obviously it's going to impact the bottom line. When you've got more patients saying yes to treatment, you can totally just change the whole financial trajectory of a practice. So having the right financial options in place changes every aspect of the practice.
Absolutely. I mean, there's just no question. What I love, I will always, my assistants, Summer and Gay and Shannon, I always tell the patient, I said, Gay's been with me forever. Shannon's been with me forever. Summer's been with me forever. And their job is to find a way for you to get this done. And you're going to love them. They're going to take great care of you. And I've already given them a ballpark, so they know, and they've given me some feedback. They've given me feedback where if I said it was 30-30, some people will say, some will say, let's do it. Some will say, I didn't know it was going to be that expensive. And I'll ask, well, how much did you think it'd be? I thought it might be 20. Okay, well, we can work with the 20, and we'll come up with some options for the rest. And then there's some that said, oh my gosh, there's no way I could afford that. I can't do that. We're going to have to come up with a different option. I'd rather do it now, come up with that option. I said, the other option is this where it's just 2 implants, denture up top, denture below, their terminal dentition, and that might be $12,000, $13,000, $14,000. Mm-hmm. But now they have the gamut of the distance between those two, and they'll make the decision where they want to be. But what's interesting for me, especially this last few years, is they all really want to have the best, you know,
Yeah.
and they're going to they find ways to do it. And if I can come up with 20, if I can come up with 30, and if I have a patient, I'll give an example, because we give back feedback. When you put in your application at Compassionate, it'll come back patient approved, because we don't just look at their credit history, we also look into their checking history. They're good stewards of their money. They don't write NSF funds. They're not changing bank accounts every week. But sometimes, you know, probably 15% of the time, you might get that call for manual approval. What does that mean? Well, we may not have enough information on credit and their banking. It may be that this person is really not going to be a good risk. But you still have the decision. The dentist has the decision to say, well, I want to override that. I want to call and override and say, I want to do this. Sometimes I would do that for a charity case that I just really want to do. Others would be where, let's say I'm putting in 4 implants. It's $8,000. It's going to take me an hour to do it. And the patient has $5,000 to put down. Well, it's going to cost me $800. I get $5,000 for that hour. And I'll take a chance on the other $3,000. You know, we are so, in dentistry, it's all about, I got to get paid. But I'd rather give options. Production per hour it's been between $3,000 and $4,000 an hour for the last 4 years. And it just gives so many more opportunities. And I'd never go back to, you know, $700, $800, $900 or $1,000 an hour, just because of the monthly payments that come in on a regular basis. And so we've got that across the country with all the dentists that are working with us. The more they use it, the more they love it, because their risk gets lower and lower and lower until pretty soon, you know, that one guy that doesn't pay, it just doesn't become a big problem.
Yeah.
As a matter of fact, we've had 5 out of over $1 million. It came out to about $70,000. And people say, oh, that's horrible. They didn't pay you 70 grand. I said, well, I got over 200,000 in interest. So that kind of offset my 70 grand.
Just a little bit, yeah.
And not only that, I sent him a letter and I go, Bob, you know, I know times are tough for you right now, but I want to take this off the table for you. You don't owe me anymore. I'm still your dentist. You know, we'll still take care of you guys. Now we'll have different arrangements for them, but you know, I just want them to know. And I said, you know, I hope you guys get everything worked out. God bless you guys. And that's it. I've had 3 out of the 5 actually come in and make payments on it. You know, just because I think we did the right thing, you know, because you can send them to Vinny, you know, to go have their kneecaps busted, but they don't have the money or they would have paid you. And so that I love that, because I can be compassionate. I can do the right thing. I can do things. If I had a problem, I lost my job, whatever, I can't pay you. Gosh, you know, you can come after me all day. I just don't have the money. And this is something that, because of the numbers, you know, it's based on time, and I got my hard costs covered. It's not like a third party financing. They're putting up 10 grand. They're putting up 20 grand. They got to get paid back or they'll go out of business. Me, I'm putting up my time. And when I look at time value, oh man, it knocks this out of the park. It really changes everything.
Yeah. And so there's a little bit of a mindset shift at the beginning. I can see how that, you know, like a dentist is going to have to go through that. But that gets easier and easier over time. Like you said, when you've got that residual cash flow coming in, that actually just lowers the risk totally. And you can actually say yes to even more people. That's really exciting. What are your thoughts on this? Like, one of the biggest, I think, roadblocks for our team is kind of prejudging patients. You know, and Elijah, you've got some good anecdotes for this about, you know, how the patient comes in and they're not quite what we would expect or what we kind of want for our ideal patient. And they don't always get proposed all of the options that are available. How would you suggest that we approach allowing patients to apply for this?
I have the ultimate story about this. I had a patient come in, and he was an elderly gentleman, and and his son, I'd been seeing his son for 30 years plus, and his dad had come in, and I kicked his dad out of the office because he was just such a turd, and he was just one of those guys that was just a pain in the butt, and I kicked him out of the office. Well, Brian came back to me and he said, Doc, you know, he said, this is a year ago, and he said, could you see my dad again? Because I know, you know, And I said, you know what? And he said, my dad's really calmed down in the last 30 years. And I said, so have I. So let's get him in. So he came in, and I started doing this presentation to him. He needed a full arch upper with implants and lower two implants on one side, 3 implants on the other, fixed crown and bridge. But I really thought he was so old that I don't know if I would spend that much money. And so I kept looking at Brian, his son, and I kept saying, I said, well, George, you can wear an upper denture. 85% of the people that wear an upper denture are okay with it. And he said, can you take it out? And I said, yeah. And he goes, I don't want it. I said, okay. I said, well, we could do 4 implants and have snaps so it would snap into place. He said, can you take it out? I said, yeah, you'll be able to take it out. I don't want it. I said, okay. Well, you're a guy, we can put in the implants and we can do in the mouth permanent, and that's what we can do. And, it's going to be a significant investment. And I'm trying to get him to say that. He didn't say a word. And so I left the room. I said, I'm going to have Shannon. She's been with me forever. I'm going to have her go over it with you. I leave the room. And Shannon goes, it's $57,000. And she goes, do we give him a case fee or anything? Or what do we do? I said, no, just tell him it's $57,000. And so she went in, told him it's $57,000. He said, okay, well, and if you pay cash, we'll give you a little discount. He said, what if I die before we finish? She said, you're right. Why don't you just pay as you go? And so I was like, well, to tell you the whole story, we just finished his case yesterday. What's today, Wednesday? Yeah, yesterday morning. We put his case in. George is 101 years old.
Wow.
It's got to be the oldest patient. If there's anybody that's done this on a 101-year-old, the biggest smile, I'll post it on Facebook, the smile that he had. I mean, we put his final in. The guy is amazing. I'm trying to downsell him to nothing. So people, we always prejudge people. It's human nature. But I've learned over the years, I still do it. I have one of my assistants, she'll go, you just prejudged them. I go, what? No, I didn't. She goes, yeah, you did. You didn't do what you do in your own mouth. I go, yeah, you're probably right. I didn't think they had the money. Truth is, I tell them, I try. Human nature pushes us, but I try to tell them this is what I'd do if it was me in your situation. In his situation, I think, man, I don't know if I'd spend $57,000 if I was 100. And like I say, he turned 101 while we're in the process of doing the treatment. So don't prejudge people because you don't know what they can do. You don't know what they can do.
Absolutely. Present those options. Let the patient.
I want to chime in on this, Charles.
Yeah, do it. I'm waiting.
So here's what happens. The dental practices throughout the country, when you're doing marketing for high value cases and you're bringing these cases in, we want a woman or a man, but let's talk about a woman for now, to walk through the door with long hair, a Louis Vuitton purse with a whole bunch of money in that purse and just deliver it with a beautiful smile, right? Beautiful smile. But the thing is, the reality is that's not the type of patients that are being brought in, especially being marketed to. It's simply not. And so the reality is that we are automatically judging the patient. As soon as they walk into the door, we're judging them. And because we're judging them, we have that mentality of we're not going to close this case anyways. So they just treat them differently because they judge them. Now, let me go ahead and backtrack before the whole Louis Vuitton walking in the door patient thing. Let's talk about over the phone. Patients that don't have teeth or have missing teeth tend to talk funny. Oftentimes, they can talk with a accent or a slang or a lisp because there's a tooth missing. And you immediately judge that patient. And so that puts you off guard immediately. Think about it. You're in a basketball game, a football game, any athletic game. Part of winning is your mindset. And if you go into that game thinking I'm not going to win, then you're not going to win. So getting over that hump of prejudging people is sometimes extremely difficult for people answering the phone, for the front office, for the person that was the treatment coordinator that goes and they have that hallway huddle with you, Bruce, before you even get in there and say, they're not going to come. You didn't even give me a chance. You just prejudge them for me. Then it's a regular thing. I see it on a regular basis in dental practices, and that prejudging thing could be the reason why dental practices aren't as successful as they want to be. So as soon as they lose the prejudging and realize that, you know what, these patients, they're people too. And if you can just imagine them talking to you with a beautiful smile that you did, it makes everything better. So maybe they don't look at their face, or maybe they don't look at their smile, or maybe they envision that somebody else is on the other side of the phone that has $50,000 and they just don't know it. But we have to figure out a way to get over that judgment zone. What do you think about that, Bruce?
Well, I couldn't have said it any better. That's what I say about it. I mean, it's human nature is to kind of size people up, and just see. One of the good things about being in Texas, you've got some folks that got oil and gas wells that come in with cow stuff on their boots and whatever. They may be making $1 million a month in royalties, and you just don't know who's who around here. That's help, but that's everywhere. I mean, it does not just in Texas. It's everywhere. And so, as hard as I try, I've got a team that is not afraid to say to me, "You prejudged them," and I go, "No, I didn't." And so it's reinforcing that. Okay, let's get back to it, because it is human nature, and having good options for them really opens the door for anybody to do really any kind of dentistry that they want to have done, whether it's veneers, crowns, implants, laser periodontal surgery, whatever it is. As long as you're getting your hard costs covered, you really are taking care of business. And one really important thing to remember is, if you didn't do the treatment, if you didn't have a good option for this patient, they're leaving.
Yeah.
You spent money to get them in and through their marketing, and they're leaving. And so, and a lot of times, you'll get 30 people coming in and you end up doing treatment on 1 or 2, and that's a big hit. Well, I don't like that. I mean, I'd rather have 30 people come in. I average about 23 new patients a month. I probably have 17 or 18 that do treatment. Why? Because we have great options for them. We can work with just about anybody. So that's what I really like about being able to help folks that have problems, and so that we actually have some decent financial arrangements that'll help them. And it actually is a benefit to us with interest. And for them, it's a benefit for them, because they actually get to make monthly payments, which is what they really need. How many people would be driving a $60,000 car,
right,
if there were no monthly payments? I mean, or if you just had to count on, 0% interest, or everybody. That's all car dealers are going 0% interest. They have lots of options to try to get you to come in. So that really is the thing that I'm always looking at. So
yeah. You said something really interesting about how your team keeps you accountable to not judge. And I think that's really important, to create a culture of that. And one of the ways that we coach our clients is to just stay focused on the patient, stay focused on that transformation.
Amen.
And we know a couple things about these patients. I mean, number one, like, they really want this. A lot of them have been probably searching for a solution for a long time. We know that it's negatively impacting their lives for, especially some of these full arch cases, or, they come in with bombed out mouths and they need, extractions and full restorations. This is a big deal for them. And they're desperately searching for an office that can show them how to make this happen. And so not only do we not know who's who that's walking into our office, we also don't know what they're willing to do to actually make this a reality for themselves. So if we can give them the option, and yeah, maybe there's a $10,000 down payment, but they might have a family member that they know they're going to. They may have a 401k stashed away that they're willing to break into so that they can do this. Maybe they have something else, some other resource that they've just been waiting for someone to give them that right, option. They can rely on that and actually say yes. So it's just stay focused, present the best option that we can to our patients, and then celebrate when we get those wins, because the patients are looking and they're going from practice to practice, and they're going to end up with the place where they can actually afford it.
You bet. I mean, it really comes down to trust, and it comes down to, if you can build trust with a patient, and when it's not about the money, when it says, "Oh, we've got some options that can help you, and this, Shannon's going to help you, and she's amazing, been with me forever," and you want to get them into that mode, or that feeling that I'm in the right place.
Yeah.
And then, and we do that every day. And sometimes they can't afford the Cadillac, but you know what? They might be able to afford a Hyundai. They might be able to afford a middle of the road. And I'm not trying to make that decision for them, but I want to make sure they're well informed about what the options are. And when I do that, they'll choose appropriately. But I said earlier, they all want the Cadillac.
Yeah.
Sometimes I'll have people say, well, if I can go get 20 and come back and I know I can do the pay, great, let's do it. And I would say, we're not doing this on every single patient that walks in the door. It might be 1 out of 5, but that's 1 out of 5 that I wasn't going to see. And so it really depends on your marketing, what you guys do, and then what options you have to help them.
Yeah,
that's really what I see.
You make a good point. One of our next questions is actually like, this doesn't necessarily have to be a replacement for your existing financial options. It's another tool in your toolbox. And I guess you're probably pretty familiar with some of the other third-party financing options. Can you maybe break down how does compassionate finance compare to a care, some of the other third-party ones that most practices may have?
Yeah, the truth is, we're really not third-party financing because there really is no money coming across. We're actually a financial technologies company that does the back end. Your team doesn't have to do the collections. Your team doesn't have to handle that. It's done in it's done in our back office. And so when you have third-party financing where they're coming up with cash, they can only approve a certain number of people, and they have to know that they're going to pay. There's no black and white area. I mean, their FICO scores have to be a certain list, or they're not even interested in doing it. And also, when was the last time a dentist has had a $50,000 treatment approved? Well, it happens, okay, no doubt, but it's just not very commonplace.
Right.
The other negative from my perspective is, and I say this a lot, is, third-party financing is great. And if you're in dire need of cash flow, and you get a patient approved, okay, I can understand that. But the truth is, when you offer people 85% of the stuff they do is interest-free financing for a year, well, that doesn't really help on a $60,000 case. Okay, it's $10,000 a month for, or whatever, $5,000 a month for 12 months. Great, got it approved, but you're going to take 10% off the top to pay for the financing, which is absolutely appropriate. They should do that because they need to be able to make revenue doing it. My deal is those are the people who would have had a great chance of writing you a check. But instead you gave them the option, let's give you the option, interest-free financing for 12 months. Well, okay, but these guys had cash. And if you told me, hey, 12 months interest-free, I'd say, okay, let's do that. I just don't want to come out of cash all at one time. Whereas if you didn't have that option, many people, actually we've seen the statistic, 46% of our patients, of our docs who have quit offering third party, not only are they not taking a 10% discount, but they're picking up 13.9 on average on the other side. So they're getting plus 13.9 as opposed to a minus 10. Well, when you look at that and you look at maybe 40 months financing, 50, 60 months financing, man, it's a big difference as far as what goes to the bottom line in your practice. You'd have to have a lot of people default for you to not make more money going the route that we're talking about.
That's really interesting. And I think, again, like this is something that you can ease into. You don't have to just dump every patient into this program.
You really don't. Some of our top docs, they're doing 4 loans a month, 5 loans a month. It's not like 8 loans a day. That's just not, it's not the practical way of doing it. But those guys who are doing 3 and 4 a month end up after 24 months having $1 million in paper. Well, when was the last time a dentist was able, and when I say paper, that's not an account receivable that we think of as 30, 60, 90, 120. This is paper. This is high value, short duration paper that has value. You could use it as collateral at the bank. You have $1 million in paper that's performing. When was the last time a dentist did that in 2 years or 3 years? And they've got consistent monthly payments. I had a doc come in the other day. He bought a practice, also had student loans. And he's just scrambling to try to, he's got a lot of open time in his schedule. I said, man, this is a perfect option because as your monthly payments come into this separate bank account we recommend you set up, pretty soon, if you've got $9,000 in payments you're making or $11,000, when you get to $11,000 coming in every month, you've just offset your liability. And you have paper that you could use doing a lot of other things, and it continues to grow. So taking the pressure off of a dentist who's in debt, it can be done fairly quickly over 24, 36 months. Now, all of a sudden, they don't have that feeling like, oh my gosh, I'm working for somebody else. Now they feel like I'm working for myself. This is revenue that's going to keep coming in. I can definitely make all my payments. I'm not struggling. And it makes a huge difference. And what we said earlier about mindset, it is the mindset. You know, when you're feeling like you're struggling and you've got those student loans and all that other stuff, you know, it just gets to be a struggle.
Yeah.
I like the fact that they can create their own wealth in what I call the dentist's own finance company. So now I have a dental office and I have a finance company, and that's awesome.
Yeah, I think you've just described the real opportunity with this whole program. I mean, it's creating cash flow. You're generating an asset, and it gives you choices in how you manage your practice without the pressure, the financial pressure. So it definitely can change the way that someone would practice. So
you know, a lot of people, Charles, worry about when I'm gonna have cash flow issues if I don't do this. I mean, if I do this, I'm gonna have cash flow issues. It's really not that case. This is down payments that you weren't going to get.
Yeah.
So, and it's covering expenses that you were already going to have. So, you know, we don't have one of our docs that have ever had cash flow issues from using compassionate finance. I would have thought they would have, but they don't. You know, and it's really a testament to the fact that, you know, they're not using it on every single patient. The fact is, those patients were going to leave anyway, and you weren't going to have it. You know, we've had questions a lot of times about how do you work an associate dentist into the deal. You know, that's an interesting concept. We probably have 10 different ways to work with an associate in a practice, and we've got multiple offices where the associate's creating the high value short duration paper, and it's like gravy for the practice. And so there's a lot of probably 10 different models that we have for working with associates.
Yeah. That's actually really interesting, because one of the things, like, we have doctors who are maybe just getting into placing implants themselves and doing some of this, you know, more advanced clinical treatment, and they'd like to do more, and we've got opportunity for those types of cases coming in, but they're maybe just not comfortable yet. So bringing in an associate who has those specialty skills, and then having the financial component in place might be a good option for those doctors.
Oh, it's a huge option. And one other thing I'll mention, because it does become an issue, a conversation that comes up. What about my team? You know, they get paid on bonus, you know, that's based on collections. And again, I recommend putting this funds in a separate account. Why? Because you can watch it grow. And so what happens is, if we have 10,000 coming in that month, I credit that 10,000 over to the practice's collections, and that becomes part of our bonus. So the more that we're doing over here on an ongoing basis that's repetitive, it helps become more stable as far as your team bonuses and everything else. Your team will really love it when they start the month out with 18,000 in cash they know is going to come in, or 25 or 70 in some offices. So it's you know, I definitely want the team to be incentivized to do it. And I don't want them to look at, I don't care whether it's third party, whether it's this, compassionate, whether it's cash. I don't really care, because I just want to make sure that these patients that I'm seeing that are coming in are doing something at whatever it is they need to do. And my team is 100% behind that. And that's really the way we think.
All right. So one of the other questions we had was, we talked about this one already, which is some of, like, the biggest objections or misconceptions about implementing this into your practice. And that's, you know, they don't want to be the bank. They're afraid that they're not going to be able to collect.
Yeah.
They're not sure how to manage collections, and they're really focused on that they need cash now. I think we've hit all of those in this conversation, and really handle them.
We hear it a lot. You know,
Yeah.
The average dental practice in the U.S. only collects 93.5% of what they do. We collect over 97% across all credit lines. You know, it's something when you have someone that is professionals doing the collections. With all due respect to the offices out there, we've got some great people to do collections. But first of all, what are the federal regulations for doing collections?
Yeah.
State regulations for doing collections. you need to know that stuff because, a lot of people, and there are people doing their own financing that are breaking federal law. I mean, when you break federal law, that means you go to the big house. They don't mess with you. And so our job is to make sure we stay within guidelines in every state and federal regulations, and that the office doesn't have to do that work. When One of the ways that I'm gonna use Dentrix or any one of the softwares there. How do we account for this? Because if we do it, then the payments come in every Friday, and how do I account for it? Putting it in a separate account. I'll give you an example. We're going to do $10,000 worth of dentistry. They paid $3,000 down. They have a $7,000 note. I take that $7,000 out of Dentrix and I put it over as a adjustment, just like a professional discount would be a 20% adjustment, or PPO would be a 40% adjustment. I take the entire $7,000, put it over into my other company, which is my financing company. So now my team is no longer worried about collecting it. And they're saying, well, that's really going to affect our accounts receivable. It has no effect on your accounts receivable. If you move it out, it's no longer part of your accounts receivable. And then let Compassionate Finance and the team do all the rest of the work. They'll work the account for 90 days, and really comes close to 120 days. And then finally, if the patient is just not going to pay, they're just not going to pay. And then we have a choice of either turning it over to collection, giving it back to the practice and saying, hey, do you want to write a letter to them? Whatever you want to do. But the truth is, once they get to that point, as long as you're doing loans and doing 4 or 5 loans a month, that's 50, 60 loans over the year. That one person who defaults, it makes no difference. That's what you have to understand. I've had docs that have quit Compassionate Finance. I've had them pull up the dashboard and say, why'd you quit? Oh, we've had too many people fail. We've had too many people that have not made their payments. I said, oh, really? Let's look at your dashboard. Do you realize that you're collecting 107% of your usual and customary fee, not a PPO discounted fee? Although we have a lot of big PPOs that are doing it. It actually recoups revenue that they were writing off. So, and the guy goes, really? Well, my front desk or my collection gal came to me and she was all hacked off because this patient didn't pay. She doesn't see the dashboard. That's where the docs need to follow the dashboard, look at it, and we'll call you. I mean, if we start seeing your numbers go down to 95, 94, we just want you to understand what that means. That means you're getting 94% of your usual and customary fee on people that ordinarily would have left. And so, it really, in my opinion, is a no-brainer, especially when you understand finance, you understand money, and you understand being on the right side of interest. Once you're doing that, man, this is it's a slam dunk. But it is 180 degrees different than what we've ever been taught. And so that's the hard part. It's very disruptive in our thought process. But the guys who get it, and I say guys collectively. But it's very, very, once you get it, you become a grand slam dude. You're going to be making a lot more revenue. And more importantly to me, you're going to be helping a lot more patients that really need help. And that's the fun part about doing dentistry, in my opinion.
Comment, but I have a question for you first. I have a very, I feel a certain way about this. Whenever patients ask, how much does that cost? I want to hear your answer. What do you do? What is your approach?
You mean how much does the treatment cost? Or how much does the Compassionate Finance cost?
How much does treatment cost? You just got done talking about a FMR case. It's quite pricey. And a patient asks you, before you even finish what you're saying, they say, how much is this going to cost me? What's your response?
My response is, well, if you want a Cadillac and you're really going to lose your teeth, it may, if you want to do the in the mouth permanent, it's $30,000 for the upper, $30,000 for the lower. They look at you and go, one of 3 things. Yep, I knew it, or I didn't know it was going to be that much, or there's no way I can do it. And those 3 things are the only things I can say. And then I can very easily go, I totally understand. And, the people who want to do the Cadillac, they're going to get the Cadillac. The ones who are in the middle, I can find a way to get them to do the Cadillac. The ones at the bottom, I may be doing 2 implants and an upper and a lower denture. And I tell them, that doesn't mean you're stuck with this. Over the next few years, we could add implants. We could get rid of the palate. You hit Texas lottery and all of a sudden, bingo, You can have it all done. So I try to make it fun. I'll have people that will say, "Oh my gosh, that's expensive." I go, "It sure is." I just laugh and I go, "It sure is, man." I said, the bad news is next year it's going to probably be more expensive. I've been doing this 38 years and it's never gone down in price. And I just look at them and smile and laugh. And they kind of laugh and they go, "Okay, yeah, you're right." Nobody's seen stuff go down. And so I want to make sure I'm really upfront with them and honest with them, and telling them this is what I would do if it was me. But financially, they have to make those decisions. People will say, we rate patients A to E. A is great credit. E is not such great credit. I mean, really bad credit. That might be in 38 states. It's 18%. You could charge up to 18% interest. So it's 9.9 for the A's interest, and it's 17.9 for the E's. A lot of people say, "Well, I don't ever want to do E's." Oh, yeah, you do. Because why? Because we know statistically that 18.4% of the E's default at some point. All right. But we have, 82% of the E's that pay full contract at 17.9% interest. Do the math. You're going to make more money on E's than you actually probably, it's going to be equal. You're going to make money on all of them as long as you keep consistently creating paper for yourself. That's what the banks do. That's what the car dealers do. That's what the used car dealers do. That's what the guys at the pawn shop. The more you can create, the wealthier you'll be. And so, and the more people you can help. And so I love that.
It pays to be the bank. And the really exciting part is all of that is most likely treatment that otherwise would have walked out your door because you just didn't have the option. And so it's all extra.
Yep, they were leaving. So, I mean, how do you get them back? Well, usually I have a lot of dentist buddies of mine. They'll say, "Well, I just dropped the price. I'll lower the fee. Try to work them in. Try to say, well, why don't we do it for this? Or I don't want to lower my fee. My fee is what my fee is. It's worth it. I know it's worth it. I don't want a discount. If I can give them good options, I can sell the Cadillac at Cadillac prices and understand that I'm going to receive interest. So on a $60,000 case, somebody pays it out, I may get $75,000.
That's awesome. Tim has a really good question. He says, and I've had this same question before as well. They said, "How would this work with an associate dentist in a practice?"
Yeah. There's no question. I mean, I'll just tell you what I would look at. With an associate in the practice, you might say you're paying them 25% of what they do. What I would say is, to do this with an associate, imagine saying we want a 25% down payment. So 25% down payment covers the cost of the associate, whatever that cost is. Now, yes, there's going to be some hard costs on the other side. It's going to be minimal. Interest will offset that. But imagine having another dentist creating high value, short duration paper for you. And I would tell the dentist, you can approve everybody you want to. We just have to get 25% down. Now, what I've done is offset theirs. And now what am I investing? I'm investing in the hard costs. And am I willing to invest in hard costs that's creating me paper, high value, short duration paper that's paying on average 13.9% interest all day long? Where are you going to put money? Where are you going to put money that you're going to get 13.9% interest like clockwork? And so that's one option. There are lots of other. We have probably 10 different ways that dentists have come up with ways to pay associates. And I know Charlie at the office and Chris, they have all of these different scenarios because it's really up to your imagination. How do I want to offset this? Imagine just for the hard cost, you borrowed out of your own 401k. I'm not going to say do that, but you borrowed out of your own bank account. And it cost you $10,000 a month for somebody to create you $30,000 a month in paper at 13.9% interest. Man, that's a 250% return on your money. I'd invest in that all day long. So I don't worry about that part of it at all. And it's not really that cash flow is not the issue. If I'm getting the down payment to cover their costs, works like a champ. It really does.
It's almost like it's one way to turn your daily practice into a way to fund your retirement too. I mean, you're thinking long term as well.
Well, I mean, the average dentist, I mean, they hope after 40 years of practice that they could sell their practice for 500,000 or 600,000. I'm saying we've got docs right now that are creating $500,000 in high value, short duration paper a year that's paying them, you know, and it just keeps coming. And so to me, that's a huge deal. I mean, that's a huge deal because now dentists can, well, the more money you're making, the more charity stuff you can do, the more fun things you can do, the more you don't worry about it. If you want to buy a piece of equipment that's going to cost you $3,000 a month, it's not about and again, it's the monthly payment. I got 3,000 extra coming in over here. Why don't we put that towards buying a Omnicam, or why don't we put that towards a CT, you know, scan, you know, or whatever it is. You get to control where that money goes. I promise if it goes into the dental practice overhead, that's what I call the spiral of debt, you'll never see that money. If you put it over in a separate account, we have one doc up in Portales, New Mexico. And he's been with us longer than anybody. Over the last 7 years, he paid off his mortgage and bought an airplane, cash, all in his account. And so, you know, when was the last time a dentist in 7 years was able to pay off their mortgage and buy an airplane? You know, but he only uses it twice a month. An average of about 7,000 per loan. So he's doing 15,000 a month, $120,000 a year, 140, maybe more than that, but you know, 180,000 a year. But over 7 years, he's done well over $1 million in paper, and you know, that's what he's doing. He's used it. So it's you know, you can do it with whatever you want to with it. And when was the last time you looked at a bank account and went, "Oh my gosh, I got 80 grand. Oh, I got 140," and you're not touching it. You know, so that's fun.
Dr. Baird, I have a question. You know, we work with a lot of dentists that have oral surgeons and periodontists that are working in their practice. Do you help, or does your team help to get them the financial contracts, or at least the advice for that model? Because that model is a little bit different than the associate model, because a lot of them are used to getting their money right now. So can you, I guess you don't have to go into it, but do you guys have a solution for them?
Yeah, we do have solutions. I'll say one story is that we have one oral surgeon that he finances the whole thing, gives the down payment to the restoring doc, and he finances everything. So everything he's doing is creating paper. The restorative doc's getting paid with cash, and you know, he's building an amazing and I call it a portfolio because it's a portfolio of paper. And but there's a lot of options, and again, it comes down to, you know, your imagination. You know, it just how would this work as a business person if I did this? And we have a good bit of experience after 7 years now of working with a lot of dentists and coming up with plans for them, and those guys probably be a lot better off telling you than I would about what's actually going on.
Right. So it's more than just the platform and the service of actually executing, you know, the management of these loans. It's also kind of the coaching and consulting and advice that they'll get from your team on how to bring these strategies into their practice.
Yeah, it really is. And again, Compassionate Finance is a financial technology company. We're beta testing right now a new product that will actually help with accounts receivable. So automate it where you're not having to touch it. It's just automated, you know, where, you know, with automation, that's what technology has to do. Technology has to make things easier for the people who are using it. Mm-hmm. And so we've got 3 different products that'll be coming out over this next probably 12 to 15 months that are going to be just add-ons that help in all these different areas in dentistry. And so we're absolutely excited about kind of what the company's doing and what we're doing and how we're helping patients and how we're helping the practice.
Awesome. Dr. Dean Hutto has a question for you. He says, what type of training is involved? Front office never likes change, and this is going to be something new.
You know, Dean, I know front office, and you know, people don't like anything new. What we try to do, the good news is when your team goes and does an application for third-party financing, and half of them get accepted and half of them don't. And if you approach it that way, because what's the worst thing for them on a daily basis? It's going in and telling a patient, man, I'm sorry, we didn't get you approved. What other options do you have? Well, you can start prepaying if you want. They don't have options. And so this is actually a super positive if it's presented that way. It's absolutely positive for the team. The other thing is front office, they don't have to do the collections on this. They take the 30% down, they're going to get credited for all the collections over a period of time. As that money grows, it grows and it becomes pretty significant. And so it really is less work on the team, and it's more positive from the standpoint that 85 to 90% of the people are going to get to hear yes. So from my perspective, Dean, yes, there's training involved, but it's one of those things that the less they have to do, the better, with all due respect, because if they're having to make these calls, we actually are able to make these calls the day that they miss an ACH payment. 97% of the people who miss an ACH payment, 97%, we get current within 21 days. So, I mean, first of all, your team doesn't have time to make those phone calls. They wish they had time, but they're busy answering the phone. They're busy doing all the things that, that Heidi you talked about, that everybody is talking about, Laura Hatch. And I mean, they're all busy trying to, here's your helmet, here's your rifle, go into battle. And that's what the average dental office is. And anything that I can get someone else to do for me, what's the fee for it? We haven't really talked about that. That it's like $149 a month to get unlimited credit checks. That's not where CF makes their money. Where we make the money is it's $4 per transaction plus 1/2 of 1%. What does that mean? We're going to average around 7% of the interest that your patients are paying. You're going to get the remaining. So if it's a patient, you're going to get about 2.9% interest, whereas CF will get 7%. That doesn't seem fair. Well, the truth is only 1/4 of 1% of A's default. That's why third-party financing puts money up for them. The E's, the office is getting 12% or 11%. And it depends on, those numbers are not exact because it depends on if it's 60 months or if it's 12 months. And so the numbers can fluctuate. So to put it in real easy terms, if you've got $100,000 in paper that you're working, that might be 40 loans or 50 loans. It's going to cost you about $500 a month for us to work that. If it's $1 million, it's going to cost you about $5,000. Well, have an employee try to work $1 million in paper. So it's automated. It's all about volume when it comes down to what we do. And that really is, that's the way we look at it.
That's awesome. I have another question for you. So, a lot of dentist reservations are, well, I don't want to just be making or getting payment plans. What is your first step? Is your first step seeing if they have cash up front, seeing if they can finance it on their own, or is it always let me get the money on a longer period and plus the interest?
Every practice is different. And again, we don't have cash flow issues with all the guys we're working with, because most important to remember is these folks are leaving. They're not going to have the work done. They're not going to have anything. They're not going to spend any money with you. For me, if you're really in need of cash flow, third-party financing can make sense. But remember, 46% of those people would write you a check. If you give them an option of cash up front, or we have payment options, compassionate finance, they're either going to pay or they're going to go for monthly payments. And if that's the only option, what you'll find is your cash payers actually go up. Now if you offer, we've got 12 months interest-free financing, which is what's offered in every dental practice in the United States, 12 months interest-free financing, 12 months. Well, the truth is a lot of people that have good credit are going to get approved for that. But for you to take a 10% discount on somebody that could have written you a check, unless you absolutely had to have the cash, probably makes more sense to just let them, 46% of them, pay you the cash up front without a 10% discount, and then finance the others at 9.9, and they're loving it because 9.9 is reasonable. I mean, it's reasonable when you look at credit cards and everything else. And an E can't complain about 17.9 at all because they've got lousy credit. So, and most of the time you'll hear people say, well, I don't want to do any payment plans. Well, why do they say that? Because they already got turned down at Best Buy. They've already got turned down other places. And you say, we work with a company that we get an enormous amount of acceptance. And the truth is you get to make that decision. If it says, call for manual approval, and then the team at the office says, this is a real questionable, I'm not sure I would do it, then you can go tell the patient it's 40% down, and we can't do the 20,000, but we could do 10. It's really gives you the opportunity to help somebody and still make it affordable for them. And that's really what we see happen day in and day out in the office.
I want to bring it back to kind of the beginning of our conversation. What we specialize in bringing high value dental implant patients to practices through marketing. That's it. That's all we do is just do implants. And Dr. Bruce Baird, you created Productive Dentist Academy. Was it because of the mindset of bringing in these high value cases that compassionate finance was created? Was it because of that? Because that was your area you were focusing on? Can you just go backtrack a little bit and talk about that?
Sure. Productive Dentist Academy was really started 14 years ago on an assumption that, most dentists aren't producing at what level they could be producing at. And most of the time that is literally communication skills. It's literally about how do we communicate with the patient? How do we build value? How do we put service mix, which might be high value or maybe not even large treatment plans. But 95% of all the crowns in the United States are done one at a time. Why is that? Well, it's because of this. Patient needs 5 crowns. Your team member goes in and says your total is going to be for these 5 teeth is going to be $5,500. And the patient asks the next question. How much will my insurance cover? And they say, it'll cover $1,500. Your portion will be $3,500. Well, the average savings account across the United States is $4,300. Now you're telling somebody they got to come up with $3,500 to do it. And what the patient says is, can we just do one? Which one's the worst? Every dentist listening to this knows that that's what they hear every day. And the team member says, yes, we can do one. And I think this one's the worst. Let's get you set up. And the doctor's outside listening saying, yay, we get to do 1 crown because the average dentist is only doing a couple crowns a day anyway. And so I'm thinking to myself, okay, what's a better option? A better option. And the insurance company's laughing their butt off because they're only coming up with $500 and the patient's coming up with $500 out of pocket. What I'd rather tell the patient, we go through the same scenario. It's $5,000 or $5,500, whatever it is. How much will my insurance cover? It'll cover $1,500. Your portion will be $3,500. Patient says, can we just do one? My team is trained to say, you could, George, but why don't we do this? Why don't we just use your insurance as a down payment and we can come up with payments for the rest? It's like $88 a month. And doc can give you a couple of pills. You can snooze the whole time as long as you can have somebody bring you and take you home. I've never had a patient say no to that, ever. Now what I'm doing is I'm doing 5 crowns at a time. I'm doing whatever the patient needs, and I'm getting $1,500 cash, when I was only going to get $1,000, and the patient was going to have to come out of pocket. What we've learned and what we've been taught is so bass-ackwards. It just doesn't make sense. And from a business standpoint, it just doesn't make sense. And so with our new way of thinking, and as dentists start to do that, if you're not doing this type stuff, then others will be down the street. And I just think it's the right thing. Now, a lot of other companies have come on the market doing kind of what we do, and people are kind of fooled into this scenario. 100% acceptance, no credit checks, and we guarantee your payments. Now, figure that one out. How long is that company going to be in business? They're approving everyone. They do no credit checks, and they guarantee the payments. We've seen these companies come and go. There's probably been 8 or 9 of them. I think it's probably the same company that keeps opening with a different name. I don't know. But it doesn't work. If it sounds too good to be true, it's too good to be true. Because there's no way in the world you can approve every single E and F patient or whatever and guarantee those payments. It'll happen for a little while, and then they just move to another company. And so that's something we deal with. I try to tell people, we're going to go with this. We're going to go with that. We've heard this is really good. I said, just think about it. It's totally up to you guys. We're here, again, over 170 million in notes. We've been around now for a while. Truth is, I didn't know what it was going to be like when we started. Greg May, I see him have a question on there. Russell Mann, I see Dean. I see these questions. We didn't know. And I told them, honestly, we don't know, but boy, we do know now because we've got the stats and we've got the data, but no one had ever done it before. But now that we have the data, it actually works, and which is amazing and really good for us and good for the patients too. So I don't know if that answered your question, Elijah. I get off on a tangent.
It did answer it perfectly, actually. Charles, do you have anything else to chime in on right now?
I think that was awesome. I'm super excited about this. I think like what you said about it's good for the patient. I think that's a really key takeaway is that, you know, the patient now that 5 crown example that you gave, you know, they don't have to come back over and over and over again. You know, they get the smile they want right away, you know, and they're able to fit it into their budget easily and they walk away happy. I mean, that's a patient that's going to refer. They're going to give you a great review for your practice, you know, and there's somebody that's going to be an evangelist for you now in your community. So I think that's
100%. And what's wild, Charles, is we've been convinced. I've heard dentists do this all the time. Well, why don't we use your insurance this year? And then we'll use your insurance next year. And then we'll use your insurance the year after. We think we're doing them a favor by telling them that. When the fact is, if that dentist needed 5 crowns done, they want it done in 2 visits or 1 visit, and they want it done today. They would never delay because what's going to happen? One of those crowns might turn into endo. Another crown ends up fracturing. They lose the tooth. It ends up with an implant. All of those things across the board. I mean, we're not helping the patient. What we're doing is we're doing what insurance companies tell us to do, which I can't stand insurance companies. But if they got $1,500, let's find a way to get it. And that becomes the down payment. Let's do whatever else they have. And patients can come up with a difference. So it's awesome. It really is.
So exciting. Do we have any more questions, Elijah?
No, I think that the biggest thing is how do we get a hold of you? How do people want to get a hold of you? It looks like, what's Greg saying? I am interested in closing the $20,000 cases. What's my cost using Compassionate? So that was his question.
Greg, if you do 5 of them, that's $100,000. It's going to cost you about $500 a month. And as the amount goes down, if you didn't do another loan after that, as it went down, then it'll get to be $450, then $400, then $360, and so a month. So we're helping collect that $100,000. That's what our job is. But what we find is people are using it over and over and over and over again, and it's it's creating high value short duration paper that is extremely valuable. Wall Street will tell you, I'm not going to promise that there'll be a time when that paper could be purchased or sold. If you sold it on your own, you're going to usually get hosed. But if we could aggregate that paper, which is something I've wanted to do for 7 years, our deal is we're now getting to the numbers where it's possible that could be an option in the future, but I would never make a promise about it at this point. So, but it could be around the corner.
Yeah. Well, and plus that expense, I mean, I think focus on the gain. I mean, you're paying that interest out of treatment that you otherwise wouldn't have had. And it's on interest that you're collecting on top of your UCR fees. So, I mean, if you're sharing some of your profits so that they can help you implement this system. That's what's happening. It's not really a cost.
Yeah, it really does not cost you anything because the patient's paying it out of interest. So, and again, you're just what you said. They're not going to do the work anyway. They're going to leave, and that's frustrating for everybody. You set the room up, you did everything else, you spent your time, and I think doing good while doing good, offering people payment options. These are all things that can be awesome. You can go, if anybody wants information, they go to compassionatefinance.com. It's got all the information on there. We're in it for good. That's what our slogan is. The phone number is 866-960-6323. You'll probably talk to one of 3 or 4 different people there at the office, maybe Charlie, Chris, one of the team, and they'll walk you through everything. They'll give you a lot more concise answers probably than I did. But it's something that I think it's a unique opportunity that's been around now for 7 years. We're just now starting to get away from the headwind, and we're starting to get a little sailing, going. So it's things are moving in the right direction because people are starting to understand it. And it was so disruptive as far as a thought process when we started, but we made it through all that, and then we are where we are. So I appreciate you guys.
And then that mindset shift is kind of something that we see with our clients too. They're getting that, hey, we should focus more on trying to attract and convert high value cases and actually end up doing more production and more impact with less effort, by getting these patients in. And so the financing is a way for you to do that more successfully. And so if you guys are interested also in learning how to increase that high value case flow, and then having this as a financial option, you can also contact us at drivendentalmarketing.com, and we'll do a free strategy session. We'll talk about, well, what's your plan to stand out in the marketplace? How do we attract more patients? How can we help your team get focused on converting these, and just helping you get all the systems in place? And one of those systems is the financing part of it. So we can be another resource for you as well if you're interested in doing more implant cases.
You bet. You bet. That's the deal. You see so much stuff out on the internet. Oh, get new patients. I don't want new patients. I want new patients that need something done. Yeah. I don't want somebody that needs, 2 cleanings and, that's it. So I'm with you guys, man. High value cases are what I'm in for. So, and that's what we've done the training to do. So it's good.
Absolutely.
Like our Facebook page, we're going to be posting a full schedule there with the description of all the guests coming up. And hey, by the way, if you think of someone that you think would be someone that you'd love to have a conversation with that's related to high value cases, give us a suggestion too about who we should be talking to. We want to make sure that we're delivering value to the marketplace.
Absolutely. So, are in a situation where you're like, man, I wish I could do dental implants, or I wish I could do this marketing, but I don't place dental implants. We're actually having a cruise November the 15th with Dr. Arun Garg, implant seminars. It's from Fort Lauderdale to Cuba, very reasonably priced. Here's what Dr. Arun Garg says. He says, by the time you get off the ship, if you don't know how to place implants, by the time that you get off the ship, you'll be able to place simple, straightforward implant cases. And also, he has a lot of his coursework on socket preservation. And so it's going to be 12 hours of CE on the way to Cuba with implant seminars. We're super happy to have Dr. Arun Garg. And man, it is just awesome. I feel like the NBA All-Star team is coming through Driven Dental Implant Marketing. We get to meet all of you in person. And man, I just get excited every single time I meet somebody that's dental famous. And that was you today, Dr. Baird. So I appreciate you.
I don't know about that, but thank you. I enjoyed it.
Absolutely. All right, you guys, take care.